At my birthday party, my husband raised his hand and struck me across the face in front of 200 guests. But when I started laughing, really laughing, he stumbled backward like he'd seen a ghost, because he suddenly remembered what I'd told him 3 years ago. The day you lay a hand on me, Cooper, is the day you lose everything. As blood trickled from my split lip, I pulled out my phone and sent a single text message that would destroy not just him. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. But the entire criminal empire his family had built on the suffering of others. The Starlight Ballroom glittered with 1,000 crystal lights, each one reflecting off the champagne flutes of Silicon Valley's most powerful tech executives. My 38th birthday party was supposed to be Cooper Morrison's crowning achievement, the night he would announce our company's IPO and cement his position as the Valley's newest billionaire. Instead, it became the stage for his complete destruction. I touched my face where his hand had connected, feeling the warmth of blood against my fingers. 200 pairs of eyes stared at me as I lay on the polished marble floor. My silver Versace gown pooled around me like liquid mercury. The string quartet had stopped mid-note, their bows frozen in air. Even the waiters stood motionless, champagne bottles still tilted toward half-filled glasses. But I wasn't looking at them. I was watching Cooper's face transform as the implications of what he'd just done crashed over him like a tsunami. His perfectly styled dark hair, the same hair I'd once run my fingers through with love, now stuck to his forehead with sweat. Those green eyes that had charmed investors out of millions were wide with a terror I'd been waiting 3 years to see. "Nicole," he whispered, reaching toward me with the same hand that had just struck me. I didn't mean. The laugh that erupted from my throat wasn't planned. It was pure, crystalline satisfaction breaking free after years of careful control. It started as a chuckle, then grew into something deeper, richer, more genuine than any emotion I'd displayed in this glittering prison of a marriage. "Oh, Cooper," I said, pushing myself up with deliberate slowness, making sure everyone could see the blood on my lip, the red mark blooming across my cheek. "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." Behind him, his mother Patricia Morrison stood frozen in her Saint Laurent cocktail dress, her surgically perfected face unable to fully express the horror dawning in her eyes. She'd orchestrated every detail of tonight's party, from the guest list carefully curated with tech journalists and potential investors, to the timing of Cooper's announcement. But she hadn't planned for this. "Ladies and gentlemen," I announced, my voice carrying clearly across the silent ballroom as I stood. "I apologize for the disruption to your evening, but I think you'll find what comes next absolutely fascinating." I pulled out my phone, not the latest Morrison tech prototype Cooper insisted I carry, but a simple burner phone I'd hidden in my clutch. My fingers moved across the screen with practiced precision, as I accessed an app that looked like a calculator, but was actually a remote trigger for the most comprehensive data dump Silicon Valley had ever seen. "You see," I continued, watching Cooper's face drain of all color, as he recognized what I was holding. "My husband thought he married a trophy wife, a former yoga instructor from Riverside, who'd be grateful for the privilege of bearing the Morrison name. Someone who'd look pretty in photos and never ask questions about the mysterious shipments, the offshore accounts, or why so many of our employees ended up mysteriously ill." Rosie Huang, Cooper's business partner and the woman I'd discovered he'd been sleeping with for the past 18 months, tried to edge toward the exit. I'd expected that. What she didn't know was that Tony Castellano, the head of security who'd been secretly working with the FBI for the past year, was already moving to block her escape route. 3 years ago," I said, my voice growing stronger with each word, "Cooper made a mistake. He brought me to a company retreat in Tahoe, where he thought I was safely tucked away in the spa. But I have excellent hearing, and the walls in that luxury cabin were thinner than he realized. I heard everything. The plans to use Morrison Tech's revolutionary new processor chips not for the humanitarian purposes you've all been sold on, but for something far more sinister." I pressed send on the message I'd composed months ago, the one that would simultaneously deliver terabytes of evidence to the FBI, the SEC, the Department of Justice, and every major tech journalist in the country. The one that contained 3 years of meticulously gathered proof that Morrison Tech wasn't just another Silicon Valley success story, but a front for international money laundering, corporate espionage, and worse. Nicole, stop. Patricia's voice cracked as she stepped forward, her practiced composure finally shattering. You don't understand what you're doing. The people we work with, they'll kill us all. No, Patricia, I replied, holding up my phone so everyone could see the sent confirmation on the screen. They'll kill you. I made a deal with the federal prosecutors 6 months ago. Full immunity in exchange for my complete cooperation. Every meeting, every transaction, every crime, it's all been documented. The ballroom erupted into chaos as phones began buzzing simultaneously. Guests frantically checked their devices as push notifications from major news outlets flooded in. Breaking: Morrison Tech under federal investigation for money laundering. Tech giant's dark secret, FBI raids imminent. The birthday party that brought down a billion-dollar empire. Cooper lunged toward me. Whether to grab the phone or strike me again, I'll never know. But Chris Walker, another of the security team members who'd been turned by the feds, intercepted him with professional efficiency. As Cooper struggled against the restraint, his perfect facade finally cracked completely. "You stupid bitch," he screamed, all pretense of the charming tech mogul gone. "Do you have any idea what you've done? They'll destroy everything, the company, the foundation, all of it." "The foundation," I said, letting disgust color my voice for the first time. "You mean the charity that's been funneling money to human traffickers? The one that uses sick children as props for photo ops while selling their medical data to the highest bidder?" "Yes, Cooper, I know about that too." Through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Starlight Ballroom, I could see the flashing lights of law enforcement vehicles surrounding the building. The FBI had been waiting for my signal, and Cooper's public assault had given them probable cause they needed to move immediately rather than waiting for Monday's planned raids. "Everyone, please remain calm," I announced, as federal agents began entering the ballroom. "You're not in any danger. Though I would suggest those of you who've been accepting bribes from Morrison Tech to contact your lawyers. The feds have been very thorough." As Cooper was placed in handcuffs, his custom Tom Ford tuxedo now wrinkled and stained with the sweat of his panic, he turned to look at me one last time. Gone was any trace of the man who'd swept me off my feet 4 years ago, with promises of adventure and a life beyond my wildest dreams. In his place stood a cornered animal, all pretense stripped away. "Why?" he asked, and for just a moment, he sounded genuinely confused. "You had everything, the houses, the cars, the status. Why would you throw it all away?" I walked closer to him, careful to stay out of reach, but close enough that he could see the determination in my eyes. The same determination he'd missed every time he'd dismissed me as just another pretty face, every time he'd conducted criminal business in front of me, because he assumed I was too stupid to understand. "Because some things," I said quietly, "are worth more than money. Like justice for the 43 Morrison Tech employees who developed rare cancers from exposure to the toxic materials in your illegal chip manufacturing process. Like freedom for the teenage girls your foundations trafficked through its international programs. Like sleeping at night without seeing their faces." The FBI agent holding Cooper began to lead him away, but I had one more thing to say. "Oh, and Cooper, happy birthday to me." As they escorted him out past hundreds of recording phones, past journalists already composing their headlines, past the complete destruction of everything he'd built on the suffering of others, I allowed myself one moment of pure satisfaction. Then I turned to address the room one final time. "The buffet is still open," I announced with a smile that was finally, genuinely my own. "And the champagne is excellent. Though I should mention, the Morrison estate is being seized as proceeds of criminal enterprise, so this might be your last chance to enjoy it." 6 months before the birthday party that would change everything, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror applying concealer to a bruise on my upper arm. Cooper hadn't hit me, not yet. This was from his grip during an argument about my spending at the charity auction. "You embarrassed me," he'd said, squeezing until I gasped. "Bidding against Sylvia Chen, when you knew I needed her husband's support for the Singapore deal. That was the night I began recording everything. I'd met Cooper Morrison at a wellness retreat in Sedona, of all places. I was teaching sunrise yoga sessions to executives who paid $5,000 a week to find their centers while drinking green juice. Cooper had walked into my class late. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Still checking his phone, designer workout gear, pristine and obviously unworn. "I'm sorry," I'd said with professional calm, "but we maintain a no devices policy during practice." He'd looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time. Later he'd tell people it was love at first sight. What I saw in his eyes that morning was calculation. A pretty yoga instructor from a working class background. Moldable, controllable, perfect for the image he wanted to project. The courtship was a whirlwind designed to sweep me off my balance. Private jets to Paris, dinner at restaurants with year-long waiting lists, a 2-carat diamond ring presented at sunset on his yacht. My friends from Riverside, the ones who'd known me since high school, warned me it was too fast, too perfect. But when you've spent years teaching yoga to rich people while barely making rent, the fairy tale is intoxicating. "You complete me, Nicole," he'd said, during his proposal, the Pacific Ocean glittering behind him. "With you by my side, there's nothing we can't accomplish." I should have paid attention to that phrasing. Not "I love you," not "I can't live without you," but what we could accomplish together. I was an acquisition, not a partner. The wedding was a Morrison production from start to finish. 500 guests at the Fairmont, none of them my actual friends or family. "Your cousin Teresa just wouldn't fit in," Patricia had explained with a smile that didn't reach her Botoxed eyes. "And that community college friend of yours, what was her name?" "Maria." "Well, we simply can't have someone like that in the wedding photos." I became Nicole Morrison like putting on an expensive costume. Designer clothes selected by Patricia, hair colored and styled by the same team that handled tech wives worth billions. Speech lessons to eliminate what Cooper called my unfortunate Valley Girl tendencies. I was being optimized like one of his products, debugged and updated until I met Morrison's specifications. River Chang, Cooper's CFO and best friend since Stanford, was the only one who seemed to see through the performance. "You sure you know what you're signing up for?" he'd asked. At the rehearsal dinner, words slightly slurred from champagne. "The Morrisons don't do divorce, not ever." I'd laughed it off then. What I didn't know was that River was trying to warn me. The Morrisons didn't do divorce because their former partners had a habit of having accidents, car crashes, overdoses, suicides that left no note. River would later become one of my most valuable sources, his conscience finally overcoming his loyalty when the body count became impossible to ignore. The first year of marriage was almost convincing. Cooper played the devoted husband in public, and in private, he was simply distant, absorbed in work, building his empire. I filled my days with charity committees and Pilates classes, playing the role of the tech wife to perfection while feeling myself disappearing bit by bit. Then came the retreat in Tahoe. I'd been in the spa, but the massage therapist was running late. I decided to return to our cabin to grab a book. The unseasonably warm weather meant the windows were open, and voices carried clearly from the deck. Cooper, Patricia, and 3 men I didn't recognize were deep in conversation. "The beauty of the processor design," Cooper was saying, "is that the back door is completely undetectable. Every phone, every laptop, every smart device using our chips becomes a window. Corporate espionage, government surveillance, identity theft, whoever controls the master key controls everything. And the manufacturing," one of the men asked in accented English. "Russian, maybe Ukrainian. The facility in Shenzhen is perfect," Patricia replied. "No environmental oversight. No safety regulations. We can produce at 30% below market cost." "What about the workers' exposure to the man began?" "Acceptable losses," Cooper cut him off. "The NDAs are ironclad. Even if they live long enough to develop symptoms, they can't trace it back to us." I stood frozen in the hallway, my heart hammering so loud I was certain they'd hear it. This wasn't just corporate greed, this was monstrous. The Foundation provides perfect cover, Patricia continued. Humanitarian technology for the developing world. No one questions shipments to charity recipients. And the kids in the program are selected carefully. Cooper finished. Orphans. Runaways. No one who'll be missed. The organ market in Eastern Europe is extremely lucrative. I must have made a sound, a gasp, a whimper, because Cooper's head turned toward the window. I fled back to the spa, spending the next 2 hours forcing myself to breathe normally while hot stones were placed on my back. That night at dinner, I smiled and laughed and played the devoted wife while my mind raced. They were using Morrison Tech's revolutionary processors to spy on millions. They were poisoning their own workers. And the Morrison Foundation, the charity I'd been so proud to represent, was trafficking children. That night, while Cooper slept beside me, I made my decision. I couldn't go to the police. The Morrisons owned half the judges in California. I couldn't run. River's warning echoed in my mind. But I could gather evidence. I could build a case so airtight that even their connections couldn't protect them. The next morning, I bought my first burner phone with cash withdrawn from grocery purchases. I contacted Selena Vance, a journalist who'd been investigating tech company labor violations, and I began my 3-year journey from trophy wife to the weapon that would destroy the Morrison empire. The storage unit in East San Jose looked abandoned from the outside, rust-stained metal door, faded number barely visible, surrounded by units that hadn't been opened in years. I'd chosen it specifically for its invisibility. The kind of place Nicole Morrison would never be caught dead visiting, which made it perfect for who I really was beneath the designer clothes and perfect highlights. Inside, fluorescent lights flickered to life, revealing my real life's work. 3 years of evidence covered every wall like a detective's murder board. Financial records, photographs, shipping manifests, medical reports. At the center, a map of the Morrison empire, with red strings connecting shell companies, offshore accounts, and body counts. I pulled off my Hermes jacket and designer heels, changing into jeans and a hoodie I kept in a lockbox. The transformation was more than physical. I could feel Nicole Morrison sliding away like an expensive mask, revealing the woman Cooper never knew existed. My secure laptop booted up, displaying encrypted files that would make the FBI salivate. But I wasn't ready to involve them yet. First, I needed to understand the full scope of what I'd uncovered. The Morrison crimes weren't just financial, they were a web of horror that touched thousands of lives. File 001, Morrison Tech Employee Medical Records. 43 cases of rare lymphomas and organ failures among factory workers in Shenzhen. Average age 22. Average time from first exposure to death, 18 months. File 047, Foundation Scholarship Recipients. 72 children brought to the U.S. for educational opportunities. Only 31 ever enrolled in schools. The rest vanished into what Cooper casually referred to as the pipeline. File 112, the Prozac patches. My own medical records, documenting how Patricia had convinced her personal physician to prescribe me antidepressants for anxiety. What she didn't know was that I'd had the patches analyzed. They contained enough sedatives to keep me compliant and foggy, but I'd been applying them to a silicone patch of fake skin every morning instead. The burner phone buzzed. Selena's code, coffee at usual place. 20 minutes later, I sat across from Selena Vance at a taco truck in Redwood City, far from any Morrison Tech security cameras. The Pulitzer-nominated journalist looked exhausted but determined, her dark eyes sharp, despite the circles beneath them. "You were right about the shipping manifests," she said, without preamble, sliding a folder across the picnic table. My contact at the Port of Oakland confirmed it. Morrison Tech containers marked as humanitarian aids never go through standard inspection. They're waved through on Patricia Morrison's personal authorization. I opened the folder, scanning cargo lists that made my stomach turn. Medical supplies that were actually precursor chemicals for methamphetamine production. Educational materials that weighed far too much to be books. And most disturbing, temperature-controlled containers that drew massive power but were listed as carrying non-perishable goods. There's more, Selena continued, lowering her voice. Remember Chris Walker from Morrison's security team? He reached out to me last week. Says he can't sleep anymore. He wants to flip. This was huge. Chris had been Cooper's head of security for 5 years. He knew where every body was buried, literally, in some cases. Can you trust him? I asked. He gave me this. Selena produced a flash drive. Security footage from the Morrison estate that was supposed to be destroyed. It shows Cooper and 2 unknown men carrying something heavy from the pool house at 3 a.m. The next day, Cooper's former business partner Troy Ashton was reported missing. Troy Ashton. I remembered him, a brilliant programmer who'd helped develop Morrison Tech's first processor design. He'd wanted to open source the technology, make it freely available. Cooper had bought him out for $50 million. Apparently Troy had later discovered what his creation was being used for. We need more than security footage, I said, though my hands trembled as I pocketed the drive. We need Cooper's personal files. The real books. Patricia keeps everything on an air-gapped server in their home office. That's suicide, Selena said flatly. You can't access that without Cooper's biometric data and Patricia's personal code. I smiled grimly. Lucky for us, I'm married to one, and having tea with the other every Wednesday. I'd been playing the long game for 3 years, becoming the daughter Patricia Morrison never had. She'd grown comfortable with me, even affectionate in her sociopathic way. During our weekly tea sessions, she'd started sharing family business details, testing my loyalty. 2 weeks ago, she'd even mentioned the server. We keep our most sensitive information completely isolated, she'd said. Manicured fingers wrapped around bone china. Can't be too careful with corporate espionage. The access code changes daily based on an algorithm Cooper designed, but I have the master override, a mother's privilege. She'd laughed at that, not noticing how carefully I memorized every detail of her study, every possible hiding place for that override code. There's something else, I told Selena, pulling out a different phone, one that looked identical to the Morrison Tech flagship Cooper insisted I carry. I've been beta testing Cooper's new unbreakable encrypted messaging app. What he doesn't know is that River Chang built in a back door for me. Every message Cooper sends, every call he makes, gets copied to my server. Selena's eyes widened. River's working with you? He has a daughter, I said simply. Rosie, 12 years old. When he found out what the foundation really does with children, he came to me. We've been documenting everything since. The irony was delicious. Cooper's paranoid security measures, his insistence on controlling all communication through Morrison Tech devices, had given me access to everything. Every criminal conversation, every threat, every order to handle someone who knew too much. I've got FBI agent Tony Castellano, ready to move, Selena said, but he needs something dramatic, something that will stick in court and survive the Morrison lawyers. I thought about the birthday party Patricia was planning, the grand celebration where Cooper would announce the IPO that would make them all billionaires. The guest list included every major player in their criminal network. How dramatic, I asked, already knowing what I had to do. Undeniable, public, something they can't spin or cover up. I smiled, the plan crystallizing in my mind. What if I told you I could get Cooper Morrison to assault me in front of 200 witnesses, including half the tech press in Silicon Valley? The Morrison Foundation's annual gala was held at the Palace Hotel in San Francisco, a glittering display of wealth masquerading as charity. I stood beside Cooper in a crimson gown that Patricia had specifically told me not to wear. "You're too bold, darling. You'll overshadow the cause," smiling for photographers while mentally cataloging every face in the crowd. That's when I saw her. Dr. Amelia Chen, no relation despite the common surname, head of oncology at UCSF Medical Center. She was staring at Cooper with an expression I recognized, barely controlled rage masked by professional necessity. I excused myself from Cooper's side and made my way to her. "Dr. Chen," I said warmly, extending my hand. "I'm such an admirer of your work." She took my hand reluctantly, her eyes scanning my face. Mrs. Morrison, I wasn't expecting to see you here. The foundation is one of my passions. I lied smoothly, especially the medical initiatives. I understand you've been treating some of our overseas factory workers. Her composure cracked slightly. Former workers. None of them lasted long enough to still be employed. I guided her toward a quiet corner, away from the crowds. I've been concerned about some reports I've seen. Unusual cancer clusters. The foundation wants to help, but I need to understand the scope. Dr. Chen studied me for a long moment, weighing risks. Then she pulled out her phone, showing me a graph that made my blood run cold. 43 cases in 3 years, all the same rare lymphoma, all worked in the same section of the Shenzhen facility. The youngest was 19. Have you reported this to whom? Her voice was bitter. The oversight committee, that Morrison Tech funds. The health department officials who vacation on Cooper's yacht. I've tried, Mrs. Morrison. Every avenue leads back to your husband. I memorized the data on her screen. What if I told you there might be another way? Before she could respond, Patricia's voice cut through the air. Nicole, darling. There you are. Cooper's looking for you. I turned to find my mother-in-law approaching with Mayor Davidson and his wife. Patricia's smile was perfect, but her eyes held a warning. I'd strayed too far from my assigned role. Dr. Chen was just telling me about the foundation's medical impact, I said brightly. It's so inspiring. Patricia's gaze sharpened as she recognized the doctor. Yes, Dr. Chen has been vocal about her concerns, though I'm sure she understands that correlation doesn't imply causation. These workers come from areas with deplorable environmental conditions. Who's to say where their illnesses originated? The specific chemical markers in their tumors say exactly where it originated. Dr. Chen replied quietly. The compounds match those used in your chip manufacturing process. The mayor coughed uncomfortably and steered his wife away. Patricia's smile never wavered, but her voice dropped to Arctic temperatures. How unfortunate that your research grant is up for renewal, doctor. It would be tragic if UCSF had to close your department due to lack of funding. After Patricia led me away, I felt my phone buzz. A text from an unknown number. She's threatened everyone who's tried to help, but I have tissue samples. Proof. If you're really trying to stop them, meet me at the loading dock in 10 minutes. AC. I waited 5 minutes, then excused myself for the bathroom. Instead, I slipped down the service stairs to the loading dock. Dr. Chen was waiting in the shadows, a small cooler in her hands. Tissue samples from 12 victims, she said without preamble. DNA evidence, chemical analysis, all of it. I've kept copies, but if something happens to me, nothing will happen to you, I promised, taking the cooler. In 3 months, Cooper and Patricia Morrison will be in federal custody. Can you stay safe until then? She laughed bitterly. I've been staying safe for 3 years. What's a few more months? As I turned to leave, she caught my arm. Why are you doing this? You have everything. I have nothing, I corrected. Just a very expensive cage. But sometimes the best way to destroy a prison is from the inside. Back in my storage unit that night, I added Dr. Chen's evidence to my growing archive. The tissue samples went into a freezer powered by a generator. Chain of custody would be crucial for trial. But as I documented each sample, each young life cut short, my hands began to shake. Love Wei, age 22, loved basketball and was saving money to bring his sister to America. Dead in 16 months. Maria Santos, age 19, wanted to be an engineer, sent her entire paycheck home to her parents. Dead in 14 months. David Park, age 24, had a 2-year-old daughter he'd never see grow up. Dead in 20 months. Cooper knew. Every safety report, every medical claim, every death certificate crossed his desk. He'd calculated their lives against profit margins and decided the math worked in his favor. My burner phone rang. River's panicked voice. Nicole, get out of there. Cooper knows someone accessed the personnel files. He's tracking all the employees who died. If he figures out you have the medical records, how long do I have? An hour, maybe less. Tony's with him, trying to slow him down, but I was already moving, transferring the most critical files to encrypted cloud storage. The physical evidence would have to stay. I'd built the unit's security specifically for this possibility. Motion sensors, cameras uploading to remote servers, a dead man switch that would alert Selena and the FBI if I didn't check in every 48 hours. As I locked the unit and drove away, I saw the black Morrison Tech Security SUV in my rearview mirror. They were 3 blocks behind, not bothering to hide anymore. My phone rang, Cooper's ringtone. "Hello, darling," I answered, forcing cheer into my voice. "Where are you?" His voice was controlled, but I could hear the edge. "Just leaving my Pilates class. The instructor ran late. Is everything okay? Come home, now." The line went dead. I drove carefully, taking the route I would have taken from the Pilates studio I hadn't visited. The SUV followed at a distance. My real phone, the one Cooper tracked, was indeed at the studio, tucked in a locker I paid for monthly. A small deception that had bought me 3 years of freedom, but as I pulled into our Atherton estate, seeing Cooper standing in the doorway with an expression I'd never seen before, I knew the game had changed. He suspected something, maybe not the full truth, but enough. Time was running out faster than I'd planned. Cooper's home office was a shrine to his ego, magazine covers featuring his face, awards for innovative technology, photos with world leaders who had no idea they were shaking hands with a monster. I sat in the leather chair across from his desk, maintaining the perfect posture Patricia had drilled into me, while Cooper paced behind his desk like a caged predator. 40 minutes, he said, stopping to stare at me. "You left the gala, disappeared for 40 minutes, and your phone stayed in the bathroom the entire time. I told you, I wasn't feeling well. The prawns. Don't." His voice was sharp enough to cut. Dr. Chen left at the same time. Security cameras show her going to the loading dock, the same loading dock where a service door was propped open from the inside. I let confusion wash over my features, a skill I'd perfected in 3 years of deception. "Are you accusing me of something?" "Cooper, I don't even know Dr. Chen beyond the foundation events." He studied me with those green eyes that had once made me feel cherished. Now they dissected me like a specimen. "Show me your purse." I handed it over without hesitation. The evening clutch contained exactly what it should: lipstick, compact, tissues, the Morrison Tech phone he tracked obsessively. He dumped the contents on his desk, examining each item, finding nothing. His frustration grew. "Strip." "Excuse me, you heard me. Strip. If you have nothing to hide, prove it." This was new. In 3 years, Cooper had been controlling, dismissive, occasionally rough, but never quite this blatant. I stood slowly, letting hurt creep into my voice. "Cooper, you're scaring me. What's this really about?" "Someone has been accessing personnel files, medical records, deaths that should have been sealed are being investigated." He moved closer, and I smelled whiskey on his breath. "My mother thinks we have a leak. I think we have a spy." I reached for the zipper of my dress, then paused. "If I do this, if I humiliate myself to prove I'm loyal, will you tell me what's really going on? These deaths you mentioned, Cooper, what aren't you telling me?" It was a calculated risk. Show too much intelligence, and he'd suspect me. Show too little, and he'd never reveal anything useful. I pitched my performance perfectly. The concerned wife just smart enough to worry, not smart enough to be a threat. He grabbed my wrist, his grip tight enough to leave marks. "You don't need to know, you just need to obey. I'm your wife, not your employee." Sometimes I wonder if there's a difference. The words hung between us, ugly and honest. Then his phone buzzed. Patricia's ringtone. He released me to answer, turning away. "Yes, mother. You're certain, I see. Yes, I'll handle it." When he turned back, his demeanor had shifted to cold efficiency. "It seems Dr. Chen has disappeared. Her apartment is empty, her office cleared out. Someone warned her." His eyes bored into mine. "You wouldn't know anything about that, would you?" "How could I? I've been here with you." I let tears well up. Another useful skill. "Cooper, you're hurting me, not just physically. This paranoia, these accusations. What happened to us?" For a moment, his mask slipped. I saw exhaustion, stress,
Ooh.
maybe even a flicker of the man I'd married. Then Patricia's programming reasserted itself. Nothing happened to us. You're imagining things, probably those anxiety medications making you emotional. He didn't know. I hadn't taken a single one. Go to bed, he ordered. We have the Singapore investors' dinner tomorrow. Wear the blue Valentino. And Nicole, don't make me question your loyalty again. I left his office on shaking legs, but not from fear, from rage. In my dressing room, I activated the recording app on my hidden phone, uploading our entire conversation to my secure server. Cooper had just confirmed on audio that he was covering up deaths, threatening his wife, and operating with paranoid consciousness of guilt. The next morning, I found River Chang waiting by my car at the Pilates studio. I actually did attend, my only honest routine in a life of lies. We have a problem, he said, without preamble. Cooper's accelerating the timeline. The IPO announcement is being moved up. He wants to cash out and disappear.
How do you know? Because I'm supposed to be setting up the offshore accounts right now.
$8 billion worth of untraceable transfers. River's hands shook as he lit a cigarette. A new habit since his conscience had awakened. Nicole, there's something else. The Shenzhen facility. They're planning to destroy it. A tragic industrial accident that will kill the remaining workers and destroy all evidence. When? 2 weeks. Right after the IPO goes through. 300 people, Nicole. 300 people who know too much. I thought of the tissue samples in my storage unit, the only evidence those previous victims would ever have for justice. Now 300 more would die, unless I acted faster than planned. Can you delay the transfers, maybe by a few days? Any longer, and Cooper will know it's intentional.
He stubbed out the cigarette. There's one more thing.
Tony Castellano. He's not who you think he is. My blood ran cold. Tony was my FBI contact, the one person in law enforcement I'd trusted with everything.
What do you mean?
I mean, Cooper's been paying him for 2 years. Every move the FBI makes, Cooper knows about it first. Tony's been feeding him information about investigations, helping him stay ahead. The betrayal hit like a physical blow. How many times had I met with Tony, thinking I was building a federal case? How much had he told Cooper? Did they know about my storage unit, my evidence, my—
He doesn't know about you,
River said quickly, reading my panic. I've been monitoring his communications. He thinks Cooper's paranoia is about a competitor trying to steal trade secrets. But Nicole, if he finds out what you really have, he'll kill me. The words came out flat, matter of fact. Cooper will kill me and make it look like an accident. Or suicide, River added grimly. Depressed trophy wife, history of anxiety, taking all those medications. Patricia's already laid the groundwork. I thought of Selena, trusting Tony with information. Of Chris Walker, thinking he was confessing to the FBI, when really he was signing his death warrant. We were all compromised, and the clock was ticking toward a massacre in Shenzhen. We need a new plan, I said. One that doesn't involve law enforcement. At least not the traditional kind. River pulled out a card. Rosie Martinez. She runs a nonprofit that investigates corporate crimes. Used to be NSA, has connections everywhere. She's completely clean. I've had her vetted 6 ways to Sunday. Rosie Martinez. The name was like a lifeline, but even as I took the card, I knew the stakes had just escalated beyond anything I'd imagined. Cooper wasn't just a criminal, he was a cornered criminal with a badge-carrying mole, and an exit strategy that included mass murder. The birthday party was a week away. 7 days to stop a massacre, expose a conspiracy, and stay alive long enough to see justice done. Rosie Martinez operated out of a nondescript office building in Oakland, the kind of place that housed tax preparers and insurance agents. But behind the frosted glass door marked Corporate Accountability Associates, I found a high-tech operation that would make the FBI jealous. Cooper Morrison, Rosie said, not getting up from behind her bank of monitors. River said you'd be coming, also said to sweep you for bugs. She held up a device that looked like an oversized phone. Cooper's getting paranoid. Found 3 trackers on River's car yesterday. I submitted to the scan, unsurprised when it beeped at my wedding ring. Anniversary gift, I said bitterly. He said the diamond was flawless. Didn't mention the GPS chip embedded in the setting. Leave it on, Rosie advised. Take it off now, and he'll know you found it. We can work around it. She finally looked at me directly, her brown eyes sharp with intelligence. River sent me your files. Jesus Christ, Nicole. This is bigger than Enron. Enron didn't murder children. No, they just destroyed retirements. She turned back to her screens. I've been tracking Morrison Tech's digital footprint for the last 48 hours. Your husband's not just moving money, he's erasing people. Entire families connected to the Shenzhen workers are disappearing from government databases. She pulled up a screen showing Chinese identification records. Faces blinked out of existence as we watched, their official records vanishing. He's eliminating potential plaintiffs before the facility accident. No family, no lawsuits. Can you stop it? I can document it. Every deletion leaves a trace if you know where to look. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. But Nicole, we need to talk about your exit strategy. When this goes public, Cooper won't just try to kill you, he'll destroy you first. Make you look crazy, drugged, hysterical. I've seen his playbook, he's done it before. To whom? She pulled up a file. Lydia Walsh, Cooper's college girlfriend. Started asking questions about his family's business dealings. Within 6 months, she was in a psychiatric facility, diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. She's still there, so drugged she can't remember her own name. I stared at the photo of a vibrant young woman, trying not to see my own future in her vacant eyes. What do you need from me? Everything. Every file. Every recording. Every piece of evidence. We're going to create multiple redundancies, cloud servers, physical copies in safety deposit boxes, dead man switches with major media outlets. If something happens to you, Cooper won't be able to contain the explosion. I handed over my latest drives, watching her plug them into an air-gapped computer. There's going to be an incident at my birthday party. Cooper's going to snap publicly. I need you to make sure it's captured from every angle. Rosie raised an eyebrow. You're going to provoke him.
I won't have to. The pressure's building. Patricia's pushing him to accelerate their plans. He's drinking more, sleeping less. All I have to do is be myself, ask the wrong question, look at the wrong person, wear the wrong dress. He'll do the rest. That's playing with fire, Nicole. The Shenzhen facility burns down in 10 days. 300 people die if we don't stop this. A slap in front of witnesses seems like a small price. She nodded slowly. I'll have people there. Servers, guests, even some of the security team. Everyone will be recording. She paused. What about after? When he realizes what you've done? Then I disappear. Rivers arranged a safe house. No. Rosie's voice was firm. Rivers good, but he's amateur hour for witness protection. I've got contacts from my NSA days. New identity, new life, completely off-grid until the trials are over. The reality of it hit me. Everything I'd built, even my compromised life as Nicole Morrison, would vanish. But then I thought of Li Wei playing basketball, of Maria Santos, dreaming of engineering, of all the children who'd disappeared into the Foundation's pipeline. Do it, I said. The next 3 days blurred together in a careful choreography of deception. I played the perfect wife while Rosie's team infiltrated every aspect of the birthday party. The florist was one of hers. 2 waiters. The photographer. Even the string quartet had a former CIA operative on violin. Chris Walker proved invaluable, using his security access to install tiny cameras throughout the Starlight Ballroom. I want that bastard to burn, he told me, during a brief meeting in a parking garage. Troy Ashton was my friend. I helped Cooper cover up his murder, and I can't live with it anymore. After the party, Rosie will get you somewhere safe, I promised. Your testimony will put them away forever. It won't bring Troy back, or those kids, or the workers. His eyes were haunted.
But maybe it'll stop the next ones. Patricia, meanwhile, had thrown herself into party planning with manic intensity. It has to be perfect, she insisted during one of our tea sessions. The investors need to see stability, success, family values. You understand, don't you, dear? Of course, I replied, sipping tea I'd watched her pour, never accepting anything prepared out of sight anymore. Cooper's legacy is everything. Exactly. She leaned forward conspiratorially. Between us, he's been under such pressure. These false accusations about the overseas facilities, the jealous competitors spreading lies. It's wearing on him. I've noticed. The drinking is temporary. Once the IPO goes through and we can step back from daily operations, he'll be himself again. Her smile was razor sharp. You've been such a good wife, Nicole. So supportive. So unquestioning. There it was, the threat wrapped in praise. She knew I knew something. The only question was how much. I trust my husband, I said simply. And you, Patricia. You've taught me so much about the Morrison way. Yes, she murmured, studying me with those calculating eyes. I have. The night before the party, Cooper came to bed actually present for once, not scrolling through reports or barking orders on the phone. He pulled me close, and for a moment I remembered why I'd fallen for him. The charm, the confidence, the way he could make you feel like the only person in the world. I'm sorry I've been distant, he said into my hair. After tomorrow, after the announcement, things will be different. We could take a trip. Europe, maybe. Would you like that? I knew he was lying. River had seen the travel documents, 1 ticket to Switzerland, not 2. Cooper planned to run with the money and leave me to face the aftermath. But I played along, letting him paint pictures of a future that would never exist. That sounds wonderful, I whispered, memorizing the feel of his arms around me. Despite everything, some part of me mourned the man he could have been, the life we might have had if he'd chosen differently. Tomorrow, I would destroy him. Tonight, I let myself grieve for the fairy tale that had become a nightmare. The Starlight Ballroom gleamed like a jewel box against the San Francisco Bay, its glass walls reflecting the sunset in shades of gold and crimson. I stood before the mirror in the presidential suite, adjusting the silver Versace gown I'd chosen specifically to infuriate Patricia. She'd sent 3 text reminders about wearing something understated in blue. The rebellion felt like armor. You look beautiful, Cooper said from the doorway, but his eyes were already distant, calculating guest lists and stock prices. He checked his phone for the dozenth time in as many minutes. The Singapore investors just confirmed. After tonight's announcement, Morrison Tech will be valued at $12 billion. That's wonderful, darling. I fastened the diamond necklace he'd given me last Christmas, each stone now feeling like a link in a chain. Rosie's team had confirmed the necklace was clean. Cooper's paranoia apparently didn't extend to jewelry he'd personally selected. A knock interrupted us. Patricia entered without waiting for permission, her eyes immediately narrowing at my dress choice. Nicole, dear, I specifically mentioned. She stopped, visibly recalibrating. Well, I suppose it's too late to change. Though silver at your age, so aging, I was 38. Patricia had worn silver to her own 60th birthday. The cars are here, she continued, dismissing me to focus on Cooper. Remember, darling, Senator Walsh will be standing near the main investors. When you make the announcement, angle yourself so the photographers capture you both. The political connection will add 20% to our valuation. As they discussed staging, I activated the recording app hidden in my clutch, one of 6 devices capturing everything tonight. Through the window, I could see catering vans arriving. Somewhere in those vehicles, Rosie's people were preparing to document the fall of an empire. The ride to the venue passed in tense silence. Cooper reviewed his speech while Patricia typed furiously on her phone, managing last-minute details. I watched the city blur past, memorizing San Francisco's skyline. By tomorrow, I might never see it again. Remember, Patricia said as we pulled up to the valet station, tonight is about projecting stability, unity, family values that investors can trust. She gripped my arm, manicured nails digging in slightly. Don't disappoint us, Nicole. The ballroom was already half full when we entered, San Francisco's elite mingling over champagne and canapés. I recognized faces from society pages and Forbes lists, but also spotted Rosie's plants, a waiter whose eyes tracked every movement, a photographer who seemed more interested in capturing conversations than posed shots.
Nicole, Sylvia Chen approached with air kisses, her husband the venture capitalist trailing behind. You look absolutely stunning. Patricia must be livid. I laughed, the sound genuine for the first time all evening. She mentioned something about Silver being aging. While she looks like she's attending a funeral in that black Chanel. Sylvia's eyes glinted with malicious pleasure. I heard Cooper's announcing something big tonight. Finally taking the company public? I couldn't say, I replied, playing the ignorant wife. Cooper doesn't discuss business with me. Her husband snorted. Smart man. Keep the pretty ones in the dark, right? He didn't notice his wife's flash of anger, or my carefully blank expression, another data point for why I felt no guilt about what was coming. As I circulated, playing hostess, I felt the atmosphere building like pressure before a storm. Cooper grew more agitated with each conversation, downing whiskeys between handshakes. Patricia orchestrated every movement like a general positioning troops, and there, by the main bar, stood Tony Castellano in an expensive suit, playing the part of a successful security consultant. Our eyes met across the room. He raised his glass in a mock toast, and I wondered if he knew that I knew. Rosie had warned me to act naturally around him, to give no sign that his betrayal had been discovered. So I smiled and nodded, even as my skin crawled. Mrs. Morrison, a soft voice at my elbow made me turn. Dr. Amelia Chen stood there, very much not disappeared as Cooper believed. I wanted to thank you for your advice about taking a vacation. Cabo was lovely this time of year. Code. She was safe under Rosie's protection. I'm so glad, I replied warmly. Everyone needs a break sometimes, especially from stressful work environments. Yes, though I'll be returning to work soon. There's an important presentation next week. I wouldn't miss. Translation. She'd be testifying to the grand jury. Rosie had secretly convened. Patricia materialized at my side as if summoned. Dr. Chen, what a surprise. We'd heard you'd left town permanently. Just a brief sabbatical, the doctor replied calmly. I have too much important work here to stay away long. The two women stared at each other, predator and prey refusing to play their assigned roles. I watched Patricia's jaw tighten as she calculated whether making a scene would damage the evening's agenda. How wonderful, Patricia finally said through gritted teeth. Do enjoy the party, from a distance. As Dr. Chen walked away, Patricia turned on me. What was that about? I have no idea, I lied smoothly. She approached me. Something about a vacation. Patricia's eyes narrowed, but Cooper's arrival interrupted her interrogation. Mother, we have a problem. 3 of the Singapore investors are asking about the Shenzhen facility. Someone leaked the safety reports. Impossible, Patricia snapped. Those reports were destroyed. Well, someone reconstructed them. They want to tour the facility before committing. He drained another whiskey. If they see the actual conditions, they won't. Patricia cut him off, glancing meaningfully at me. We'll handle it Monday. Tonight, stick to the script. And Cooper, slow down on the drinks. But he was already signaling for another, the careful control that defined him cracking under pressure. I saw River across the room, watching Cooper with a mixture of pity and disgust. Our eyes met briefly. He'd done it. The leaked reports were his work, one more crack in the Morrison Foundation. Ladies and gentlemen, the hired MC announced, dinner is served. The crowd began moving toward their assigned tables, and I took Cooper's arm, feeling the tension vibrating through him. He was a lit fuse, and everyone in his orbit was about to discover what happened when a Morrison finally exploded. As we took our seats at the head table, surrounded by cameras and expectations, I felt my phone buzz with a message from Rosie. All assets in position. Whenever you're ready, I was ready. The question was whether Cooper would detonate on his own, or need a push. Looking at his flushed face and shaking hands,
I suspected I wouldn't have to push hard. The dinner service moved with orchestrated precision, each course a small masterpiece that no one really tasted. Conversations flowed around me like water, while I watched Cooper's deterioration accelerate. Between the salad and the fish course, he'd downed 2 more whiskeys. His speech patterns were shifting, the careful polish wearing thin. The Westfield acquisition, he was telling a group of investors, his voice slightly too loud, was genius. Pure genius. We eliminated the competition before they even knew they were competing. He laughed, an ugly sound. That's the Morrison way. Strike first, apologize never. Patricia's smile grew more strained with each revelation. She kept trying to redirect conversations, but Cooper was a runaway train now, his inhibitions dissolving in alcohol and stress. I excused myself to powder my nose, knowing I'd be followed. Sure enough, Rosie Huang, Cooper's mistress, not to be confused with Rosie Martinez, cornered me in the bathroom. You need to control him, she hissed, checking the stalls to ensure we were alone. He's going to ruin everything. I wasn't aware controlling Cooper was my job, I replied, touching up my lipstick with steady hands. I thought that was your department now. Her face flushed. Don't play games. You know what's at stake. The IPO, the future of the company, the murders, the trafficking. Which part of the Morrison legacy are you most concerned about protecting? She went very still. I don't know what you're talking about. Of course not. I capped my lipstick with a decisive click. Just like you don't know about the apartment in Palo Alto. The one Cooper thinks is your love nest, but actually belongs to the SEC. The color drained from her face. Another piece clicked into place. Rosie Huang wasn't just Cooper's mistress. She was an undercover federal investigator. The realization should have relieved me, but instead I felt fury. How many people were investigating the Morrisons, while their victims continued to die? How long? I asked quietly. How long have you been building your case while people suffered? 2 years, she admitted, deflating. We needed ironclad evidence. The Morrisons have judges, politicians. I know exactly what they have. I also know about Tony Castellano. Her sharp intake of breath confirmed what I'd suspected. She didn't know about the corrupt FBI agent. Listen to me, I said urgently. Whatever you think you know, whatever evidence you have, it's compromised. Tony's been feeding Cooper information. After tonight.
The bathroom door burst open. Patricia stood there, eyes blazing. Nicole, Rosie, how cozy. Her gaze swept between us, calculating. Cooper's about to give his speech. You'll want to be at the table, both of you. We filed out under her watchful eye, returning to a ballroom electric with anticipation. Cooper stood at the podium, gripping the edges like a life raft. The lights dimmed, spotlights creating a pool of brilliance around him. Every phone in the room rose to record the moment. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, and I heard the slur creeping into his words. Tonight marks a transformation for Morrison Tech. For 6 years, we've revolutionized the industry. We've brought cutting-edge technology to developing nations. We've created opportunities where none existed. Polite applause. Patricia beamed from her seat, not noticing the sweat beading on Cooper's forehead or the way his hands trembled. But success comes at a price, he continued, departing from the prepared speech. Patricia's smile froze. People think technology is clean, digital, bloodless. They don't see the factories, the workers, the real cost of innovation. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. This wasn't the triumphant IPO announcement they'd expected. I saw River in the corner, phone out, streaming everything live to multiple platforms. My wife, Cooper said suddenly, his eyes finding me in the crowd. My beautiful, perfect wife. She thinks I don't notice things, but I do. I see everything. The spotlight operator, one of Rosie Martinez's people, smoothly expanded the pool of light to include me. Every camera turned my way. Stand up, Nicole, Cooper commanded. Let them see you. I rose slowly, my silver gown catching the light like armor. My expression remained serene, but inside, I was calculating rapidly. This wasn't the plan. Cooper was imploding faster than expected, his paranoia and guilt combusting in real time.
You want to know the truth about Morrison Tech? Cooper laughed, the sound carrying clearly through his microphone. The truth is, we're all monsters here. Every single one of us. We profit from suffering and call it progress. Cooper, Patricia stood, her voice carrying even without a microphone. You're tired, perhaps we should. Shut up, mother. The words cracked like a whip across the ballroom. Gasps echoed from every corner. I'm tired of the scripts, the performances, the perfect Morrison facade while people die in our factories. He was confessing. In front of 200 witnesses, with cameras rolling, Cooper Morrison was confessing to crimes his lawyers would never be able to explain away. Does everyone know about Shenzhen? He asked, swaying slightly. About the cancer rates? 43 dead in 3 years. We have a betting pool in the executive office about who'll be next. Senator Walsh was already backing toward the exit. Other investors followed, abandoning ship as Cooper set fire to everything they'd built. And the foundation. He laughed again. Walder now. God, the foundation. Helping children achieve their potential. Do you know what happened to those children? Do you want to know where they really went? Stop him. Patricia hissed at Tony Castellano, who had moved closer to the stage. But Tony hesitated, caught between his masters and the impossibility of silencing Cooper without making things worse. I remained standing, a silver statue in the chaos, letting Cooper dig his own grave with every word. The birthday gift he was giving me was better than anything I could have orchestrated, a public confession that no amount of money or influence could bury. My wife knows, Cooper said, his eyes finding mine again. She's always known, watching, waiting, playing the perfect wife while she plots against us. His face contorted with rage and something else, fear. But I know too, Nicole. I know what you've been doing. The threat hung in the air between us. Around the room, Rosie Martinez's people shifted positions, ready to intervene if Cooper's confession turned violent. But I didn't move, didn't flinch, just held his gaze with the calm certainty of someone who had already won. Tell them, I said, my voice carrying clearly in the hushed ballroom. Tell them everything, Cooper. The truth will set you free. Cooper's face transformed as my words registered, the drunk confusion crystallizing into pure rage. He abandoned the podium, stumbling down from the stage with surprising speed. The crowd parted like the Red Sea, guests scrambling to avoid the unfolding drama. You think you're so clever, he snarled, advancing on me. The perfect victim, the innocent wife. But I know what you are. Patricia intercepted him, gripping his arm. Cooper, stop this immediately. You're destroying everything we've. He shoved her aside with shocking violence. Patricia Morrison, the unshakable matriarch of Silicon Valley, stumbled in her designer heels and fell hard against a table. Crystal glasses shattered, red wine spreading across white tablecloths like blood. Everything you built? Cooper whirled on his mother. You mean everything you made me build? Every crime you orchestrated through me? He laughed bitterly. The puppet's strings are showing, mother. Tony Castellano moved forward, hand reaching inside his jacket, but River was faster. I wouldn't, River said quietly, his own weapon visible. Not unless you want everyone here to know exactly what kind of FBI agent takes bribes from the people he's supposed to investigate. Tony froze, his careful cover blown in front of the entire room. Phones captured every second, live streams broadcasting the Morrison Empire's collapse to audiences worldwide. Cooper turned back to me, his eyes wild. 3 years. You've been planning this for 3 years. The questions, the interest in the charity work, the perfect supportive wife act. He stepped closer, and I could smell the whiskey mixed with expensive cologne and desperation. Did you ever love me at all? I loved who I thought you were, I answered honestly, before I knew about the bodies, before I knew about the children, before I discovered that every kiss was calculated and every gift was a chain. Liar, the word exploded from him. You're just like every other gold-digging whore. You wanted the money, the status. I wanted justice. I cut him off, my voice ringing clear. For Lee Wei, for Maria Santos, for David Park, for all the workers dying in your factories while you counted profits, For the children who disappeared into your foundation's programs. For Troy Ashton, who you murdered because he grew a conscience.
Each name hit Cooper like a physical blow. The room had gone completely silent, except for the soft whir of recording devices, and Patricia's labored breathing from where she still lay among the broken glass. "You have no proof," Cooper said, but his voice had lost its certainty. "No evidence that would stand up in court." I smiled then, the expression I'd been saving for this moment. Dr. Chen's tissue samples say otherwise. The Shenzhen factory surveillance footage River preserved says otherwise. The recording of you and your mother discussing the planned accident says otherwise. His face went white. "That's impossible. Those files were destroyed. By Tony Castellano, your pet FBI agent." I let that sink in. "He's been under surveillance by Internal Affairs for 6 months, Cooper. Every file he thought he destroyed was copied first. Every report he buried has been recovered. You're lying." But he was looking at Tony now, seeing the truth in the corrupt agent's panicked expression. "The beautiful thing about arrogance," I continued, "is how blind it makes you. You were so certain I was too stupid to understand what I was seeing, too pampered to care about strangers dying on another continent, too well trained to bite the hand that fed me designer scraps." Cooper's breathing had become ragged, his chest heaving as his world collapsed around him. The investors he'd courted were recording his breakdown. The politicians he'd bought were deleting his contact information. The empire he'd built on suffering was crumbling in real time. "But the real beauty," I said, stepping closer despite every instinct screaming danger, "is that you did this to yourself. I didn't force you to confess. I didn't make you assault your mother. I simply existed in your space, and your own guilt did the rest." That's when he snapped completely. "Shut up!" Cooper's hand moved so fast I barely saw it coming. The slap connected with devastating force, the crack echoing through the ballroom like a gunshot. The impact spun me sideways, and I tasted blood as I hit the floor, my silver gown pooling around me like spilled mercury. For a moment the world held its breath. 200 witnesses, dozens of cameras, all focused on the billionaire CEO standing over his wife's crumpled form, his hands still raised, his face contorted with rage that was already morphing into horror as he realized what he'd just done. I lay there for 3 heartbeats, letting the full weight of the moment sink in. Then, as Cooper started to lower his hand, as Patricia struggled to her feet calling his name, as security moved to intervene, I did the one thing no one expected. I laughed. It started as a chuckle, bubbling up from somewhere deep inside. The absurdity of it all, the months of planning, the careful manipulation, all leading to this moment where Cooper had played his part so perfectly, he might have been reading from my script. The laughter grew stronger, clearer, filling the silent ballroom with its unexpected melody. Cooper stumbled backward, his face draining of all color, because in that moment, lying on the cold marble with blood on my lips and bruises already forming, I didn't look like a victim. I looked like a victor. "My God," someone whispered. She knew he would. "Call 911, another voice shouted. "Call the police." But I was already pushing myself up, my movements deliberate and controlled. The room watched in stunned silence as I rose to my feet, dabbing at my split lip with delicate fingers, my posture perfect despite the violence I'd just endured. Cooper stood frozen, staring at his hand as if it belonged to someone else. Behind him, federal agents were already entering the ballroom. The real ones, not Tony Castellano. Rosie Martinez had given them the signal the moment Cooper struck me. Assault and battery, in front of 200 witnesses. Even the Morrison lawyers couldn't make that disappear. "Cooper Morrison," Agent Sarah Chen announced, her voice cutting through the chaos, "you're under arrest for assault, battery and conspiracy to commit murder. You have the right to remain silent." As they cuffed him, Cooper's eyes never left mine. In them, I saw the dawning realization of how thoroughly he'd been played. The trap hadn't been the investigation, or the evidence, or even the public confession. The trap had been his own nature, his certainty that violence was his right, that I would always be his victim. "Nicole," he whispered as they led him past me. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean." "Yes," I said quietly, "you did. You've meant it every day for 3 years.
The only difference is that today, everyone else saw it too. The laughter that had started as genuine amusement transformed into something more calculated as I stood in the center of the Starlight Ballroom, every eye fixed on me. Blood still trickled from my split lip, but I made no move to wipe it away. Let them see, let them all see what the Morrison Empire was built on. Ladies and gentlemen, I said, my voice carrying clearly through the stunned silence, I apologize for the disruption to your evening, but I believe you'll find what comes next worth the inconvenience. I pulled out my phone, not the Morrison tech device Cooper tracked, but the secure phone I'd hidden in my bodice. My fingers moved across the screen with practiced precision, activating the dead man's switch I'd hoped I wouldn't need to use. Right now, I announced, watching notification lights flash across hundreds of phones simultaneously. Every major news outlet in the country is receiving a data package, 47 gigabytes of evidence documenting murder, human trafficking, industrial espionage, and the systematic poisoning of Morrison tech workers. Patricia, blood seeping through her Chanel dress from the crystal cuts, tried to stand. You can't, this is corporate sabotage. No, I corrected. This is justice, something you've avoided for far too long. My phone connected to the ballroom's AV system, Chris Walker's final gift before he'd fled to witness protection. Suddenly, the massive screens meant to display Cooper's triumphant IPO announcement came alive with different images entirely. Surveillance footage from the Shenzhen factory filled the screens. Workers without protective equipment handling toxic materials. Teenagers who looked barely 16 operating dangerous machinery. And then the morgue footage Dr. Chen had risked her life to obtain, row after row of young bodies, each tagged with a Morrison Tech employee number.
Gasps and cries of horror echoed through the room. Several people ran for the exits, only to find federal agents blocking the way. This wasn't just Cooper's downfall. Everyone who'd enabled the Morrisons was about to face their own reckoning. The Morrison Foundation, I continued, clicking to the next set of files, has trafficked over 200 children through its educational programs. These are their faces. School photos filled the screens. Smiling children who'd believed they were getting a chance at a better life. My voice hardened. 71 of them are still missing. The rest were sold to the highest bidders under the guise of private adoptions. Patricia shrieked, but her protest was drowned out by the sound of her own voice emanating from the speakers, a recording from one of Cooper's home office meetings. The Ukrainian shipment arrives Thursday, past Patricia said with chilling clarity. 12 units, ages 8 to 14. The buyers in Dubai are offering $3 million for the full set. Units. She'd called children units. I clicked again, bringing up financial records. Every person in this room who's invested in Morrison Tech has unknowingly funded these crimes. Your money built factories designed to poison workers. Your investments paid for children to be stolen from their families. Your confidence in the Morrison brand enabled murders. Senator Walsh, who'd been trying to edge toward an exit, froze as his own financial transactions appeared on screen. $5 million in Morrison campaign contributions, I read aloud. In exchange for blocking 3 separate federal investigations. Tell me, Senator, was it worth it? Was your career worth 43 dead workers? The screen cycled through more evidence. Emails, wire transfers, contracted killings made to look like accidents. 3 years of investigation displayed in devastating detail. But I saved the worst for last. Troy Ashton, I said, and Cooper, still in handcuffs, flinched at the name. Cooper's former partner, who wanted to open-source Morrison Tech's processor design, who believed technology should help people, not spy on them. The security footage was grainy but clear enough. Cooper and 2 men dragging something heavy from the pool house. The timestamp matched the night Troy had supposedly left for a sabbatical in Thailand. His body is buried beneath the rose garden at the Morrison estate, I said quietly. Patricia's prize-winning roses fed by the blood of a man who dared to say no. That's when Tony Castellano made his move. The corrupt FBI agent pulled his weapon, pointing it at me. Everyone stay calm, he ordered, but his voice shook. This woman is clearly disturbed. Fabricating evidence, manipulating, Agent Castellano. A new voice cut through his protests. Special Agent Sarah Chen stepped forward, flanked by a full FBI tactical team. Lower your weapon,
You're under arrest for corruption, evidence tampering, and conspiracy to obstruct justice." Tony's face went ashen as he realized the real FBI had been watching him all along. His weapon clattered to the floor as agents moved in, adding his arrest to the night's growing tally. "You planned this," Patricia hissed at me, struggling against the EMTs trying to treat her wounds. "All of it. You manipulated Cooper into hitting you." "I didn't manipulate anything," I replied calmly. "I simply existed in his space while he self-destructed. The violence was always there, Patricia. I just made sure the world could see it." Cooper had gone catatonic, staring at the screen, still cycling through evidence of his crimes. When the footage of him discussing the planned Shenzhen factory accident played, the one that would have killed 300 workers, he finally broke completely. "I never wanted this," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. "Mother said, she always said it was necessary. For the family, for the legacy. Your mother programmed you as surely as any computer," I said, not unkindly. "But you still made choices, Cooper. Every signature, every cover-up, every life you destroyed, those were your choices." Around us, federal agents were systematically arresting Morrison Tech executives, board members, and complicit investors. The birthday party had become the site of the largest corporate criminal takedown in Silicon Valley history. Rosie Martinez appeared at my elbow, a tablet in her hand. "The Shenzhen police just raided the factory. The workers are safe. They got there before the accident could be staged. 300 lives saved. It didn't bring back the 43 who'd already died, but it was something." "Mrs. Morrison," Agent Chen approached with evidence bags and a victim advocate. "We need to document your injuries and take your statement. What you've done tonight." "What I've done," I interrupted, "is what any wife would do when she discovers her husband is a monster. I gathered proof, I stayed alive, and I made sure he could never hurt anyone else." As the EMTs led me toward an ambulance, I passed Cooper one last time. He looked broken, aged a decade in a single night, the golden boy of Silicon Valley, reduced to just another criminal in handcuffs. "Was any of it real?" he asked one more time. "Did you ever love me?" I paused, considering the question seriously. "I loved the man I thought you were, the one who existed before your mother's programming kicked in. But that man was just another lie, wasn't he?" The truth of it seemed to shatter whatever remained of his composure. As they led him away, Cooper Morrison, billionaire, innovator, monster, wept like the child he'd never been allowed to be. The emergency room at UCSF Medical Center had been transformed into a makeshift command center. While doctors documented my injuries, split lip, facial contusions, potential concussion, federal agents set up laptops and secure communication lines in the adjacent room. Through the glass partition, I could see the systematic dismantling of the Morrison empire happening in real time. "Mrs. Morrison," Agent Sarah Chen sat beside my hospital bed, her expression a mixture of admiration and concern. "What you've accomplished tonight, in my 20 years with the Bureau, I've never seen anything like it." "You had agents investigating them for years," I pointed out, wincing as a nurse applied antiseptic to my lip. "What took so long?" She had the grace to look uncomfortable. "The Morrisons had connections everywhere. Every time we got close, someone would tip them off. Cases would disappear, witnesses would recant, or—" She didn't finish, but I understood. "Or they'd disappear entirely. That's why I couldn't trust anyone," I said. "Not until I had enough evidence to destroy them all at once, too fast for their connections to react." Through the window, I watched a live news feed on someone's tablet. Every major network was covering the story. Silicon Valley scandal, Morrison Tech CEO arrested after confessing to murders. Human trafficking ring exposed at tech giant's charity. 43 dead, the true cost of your smartphone. "The Singapore investors are already talking," Agent Chen continued. "They had no idea what they were funding. Several are offering to testify in exchange for immunity." "They knew," I said flatly. "Maybe not the details, but they knew the profits were too good to be clean. They just didn't care until it became public." Enoch interrupted us. Rosie Martinez entered, followed by someone I didn't expect, River Chang, looking haggard but determined. "Nicole," River's voice was rough. "I wanted to thank you. and apologize. I should have acted sooner. Should have. You acted when you could.
I cut him off gently.
That's more than most people did. He pulled out a laptop showing me a screen full of code. I wanted you to see this. It's a program I've been working on, a complete reversal of Cooper's spyware. Instead of stealing data, it will destroy every backdoor Morrison tech ever installed. One click, and 40 million devices worldwide will be free from their surveillance. Do it, I said, without hesitation. River's fingers flew across the keyboard. Within seconds, a progress bar appeared. Removing Morrison tech surveillance protocols, the number of affected devices climbed rapidly. Thousands, millions, tens of millions. Every phone, laptop, and smart device that had been turned into a spy tool was being liberated. There's more, Rosie Martinez said, pulling up news feeds on her tablet. Patricia's trying to claim diminished capacity, says Cooper manipulated her, that she's been suffering from dementia. I laughed, though it hurt my split lip. Show them the planning documents. She mapped out every crime with the precision of a Fortune 500 business strategy. Dementia doesn't create spreadsheets calculating the profit margins on human trafficking. As if summoned by her name, my phone buzzed with a call from the Federal Detention Center. I knew who it would be before I answered. You've destroyed us. Patricia's voice was raw, stripped of its usual polish. Generations of work, of building, of murder, I finished. Of treating human lives like commodities. Yes, Patricia, I destroyed that. Proudly. They'll come for you, she hissed. Our associates, our partners overseas. You think you're safe, because Cooper's in custody? You have no idea what you've started. Actually, I do. I put the call on speaker so the agents could hear. Your associates in Eastern Europe were arrested 3 hours ago. The Dubai buyers are being extradited. The corrupt officials you've been paying for decades are scrambling to make deals. Your empire isn't just falling, Patricia. It's being salted so nothing like it can ever grow again. Her sharp intake of breath was satisfying. That's impossible. Those connections took decades to build. The protection we had meant nothing once the evidence went public. Did you really think your bought judges and politicians would stay loyal once their own careers were at risk? They're abandoning you faster than Cooper did at the party. He didn't abandon me, she protested, but her voice wavered. My son would never. Your son shoved you into a table in front of 200 witnesses. He blamed you for everything. Called himself your puppet. It's all on video, Patricia. The whole world watched Cooper Morrison reveal that his mother was the true architect of the Morrison crimes. Silence stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. Then, quietly, I made him strong. Everything I did was to make him strong. You made him a monster, I corrected. And now you'll both pay for it. She hung up without another word. Around me the agents exchanged glances. They'd been trying to crack Patricia Morrison for years, and I'd done it with a single phone call. The Shenzhen workers, I asked Agent Chen. What's happening with them? Medical teams are on site. Everyone's being evaluated and treated. The Chinese government is cooperating fully. They're as horrified as everyone else. Several workers have already identified which chemicals they were exposed to without protection and compensation. The Morrison assets are being frozen as we speak. Every property, every investment, every hidden account we can find. The victims will be compensated first, before any other creditors. It was something though no amount of money could bring back the dead or heal the damaged bodies. But at least the survivors would have resources for treatment, support for their families. Dr. Amelia Chen appeared in the doorway, still in her evening gown from the party. I came as soon as I could, she said, then stopped short seeing my injuries. My God, Nicole, when you said he'd react badly, it had to be public, I said simply. It had to be undeniable. She moved to examine me with professional efficiency, checking my pupils for signs of concussion. You know the media is calling you a hero, the woman who brought down an empire. I'm not a hero, I'm just someone who couldn't stay silent anymore. That's exactly what a hero is, River said quietly. Through the window dawn was breaking over San Francisco. The city looked different somehow, cleaner, though I knew that was just my imagination. Evil didn't disappear with one arrest, one company's downfall. But for the first time in 3 years, I could breathe without feeling the weight of secrets crushing my chest. "What will you do now?" Agent Chen asked. "You'll need protection for a while, a new identity maybe." "No," I said firmly. "No more hiding, no more false identities. I've spent 3 years being Nicole Morrison. It's time to remember who I really am." My phone buzzed with another news alert. Morrison tech stock plummets to zero as criminal investigation expands. Below it, a photo of Cooper being led into federal custody, his golden boy image forever shattered. The empire had fallen. The monsters were caged, and somewhere in Shenzhen, 300 workers were going home to their families tonight, instead of dying in a staged accident. It wasn't perfect justice. Perfect justice would bring back the dead. But it was a start. The federal courthouse in San Francisco had never seen a media circus quite like this. Every major news outlet in the world had sent representatives to cover the arraignment of Cooper and Patricia Morrison. I sat in the witness section, my face still bearing faint bruises despite the week that had passed since the birthday party. "All rise," the bailiff called, and Judge Catherine Yamamoto entered, a jurist with no connections to the Morrison empire, flown in specifically to ensure impartiality. Cooper shuffled in wearing orange jumpsuit and shackles, a far cry from his custom Tom Ford suits. His hair, once perfectly styled, hung limp and unwashed, but it was his eyes that showed the true damage, vacant, hollow, like someone had switched off the light inside. Patricia followed, maintaining her regal posture even in custody. Unlike her son, she hadn't broken. If anything, incarceration had crystallized her into something harder, more dangerous. Her eyes found me in the gallery, promising retribution that would never come. The United States versus Cooper Morrison and Patricia Morrison, Judge Yamamoto read. Charges include conspiracy to commit murder, human trafficking, money laundering, industrial espionage. The list went on for nearly 5 minutes. As the prosecutor laid out the initial evidence, my phone vibrated with updates from Rosie Martinez. The investigation had spread like wildfire. 17 more arrests overnight, 3 more companies implicated. The corruption went deeper than even I had imagined. Your Honor, Cooper's public defender stood, looking overwhelmed. My client wishes to make a statement. Judge Yamamoto frowned. This is an arraignment, counselor, not, please. Cooper's voice cracked as he interrupted. I need to say this. The judge considered, then nodded. Cooper stood unsteadily, gripping the defense table for support. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I want to confess, to all of it. Every charge, every crime. But I need people to understand. He stopped, struggling for words. My mother, since I was 12, she, Dr. Whitley would come to the house. Hypnosis, she called it. Making me stronger. Making me worthy of the Morrison name. Patricia's face contorted with rage. Shut up, you weak fool. Let him speak, Judge Yamamoto ordered sharply. She programmed me, Cooper continued, tears streaming down his face. Like one of our computers, behavioral modification. Drugs, punishment when I resisted. Rewards when I complied. By the time I realized what she'd done, I couldn't break free. The courtroom had gone dead silent. Even veteran reporters looked shocked at the raw confession. The murders, the trafficking, the poisoned workers, I did those things. I made those choices. But they were her plans, her vision. I was just the instrument. You ungrateful bastard. Patricia lunged toward her son, only to be restrained by marshals. Everything I did was for you. To make you strong enough to lead. To make me broken enough to control. Cooper shot back, showing more fire than he had in days. You destroyed your own son to build your empire. I watched this family destruction with a mixture of satisfaction and unexpected pity. Cooper was a monster, yes, but he'd been crafted into one by an even greater monster. It didn't excuse his crimes, but it explained them. Mr. Morrison, Judge Yamamoto said carefully. Are you stating that you wish to plead guilty to all charges? Yes, Cooper said without hesitation. And I'll testify. Against her, against everyone involved. I'll give the FBI everything. The impact was immediate. Patricia's lawyer frantically whispered objections, while prosecutors struggled to hide their elation. A full confession with cooperation would save years of trial time and guarantee convictions across the board. "You're dead to me," Patricia snarled at Cooper. "You hear me? Dead. I've been dead to you since I was 12, Cooper replied quietly. "Since the day you decided your son was less important than your legacy." As marshals led them out separately, Cooper to protective custody, Patricia to maximum security, I felt a hand on my shoulder. Agent Chen stood behind me. "His cooperation changes everything," she said quietly. "With his testimony we can dismantle not just Morrison Tech but the entire network. International connections, government corruption, other companies using similar tactics. Will he get a deal?" I asked, though I wasn't sure which answer I wanted to hear. "Life in prison instead of death row, most likely. He'll never be free, but he'll live." It seemed fitting somehow. Cooper would spend the rest of his life in a cage, just as he'd caged others, just as he'd tried to cage me. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. "Mrs. Morrison, Nicole, how does it feel to see your husband confess?" I stopped, looking directly at the cameras. "I'm not Mrs. Morrison anymore. I never really was. My name is Nicole Petrov, and I'm a survivor of domestic abuse who refused to stay silent." "Will you be divorcing?" another reporter shouted. "The papers were filed this morning," I confirmed. "Along with civil suits on behalf of every Morrison Tech victim. The entire family fortune will go toward restitution." "What about your safety?" Patricia Morrison's threats. Patricia Morrison is a 70-year-old woman facing life in prison, I said calmly. Her power came from money and connections, both of which are gone. I'm not afraid of her anymore. As I walked toward the car where Rosie Martinez waited, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Freedom. Not just from Cooper or Patricia, but from the fear that had driven me to live a double life. The woman who'd spent 3 years gathering evidence in secret could finally exist in the light. My phone buzzed with a message from Dr. Amelia Chen. "The first Shenzhen workers arrived for treatment today. Thought you'd want to know. They asked me to thank the brave woman who saved their lives." I smiled, touching my still tender lip. The bruises would fade, the split lip would heal, but the knowledge that 300 people were alive because I'd refused to stay silent, that would last forever. 6 weeks after the birthday party that changed everything, I stood in the ruins of the Morrison estate. Federal agents had stripped it bare. Every computer, every document, every piece of evidence hauled away. The rose garden where Troy Ashton was buried had been excavated. His remains finally returned to his family for proper burial. "Miss Petrov," a young woman approached hesitantly. "I'm Lily Chen. I was one of the children in the Morrison Foundation program." I turned to face her, recognizing the features from the missing persons files. She was 19 now, one of the lucky ones who'd aged out before being sold. "You survived. Because of you," she said, tears streaming down her face. "When the news broke, when your evidence went public, I finally had proof that I wasn't crazy, that the things I remembered really happened." We sat on the mansion's front steps, surrounded by the debris of empire. Lily told me her story, recruited at 14 with promises of education, then groomed for sale to a tech executive with particular tastes. She'd escaped at 17, but no one believed her accusations against the prestigious Morrison Foundation. "There are others," she said. "Dozens of us who got away but could never speak up. We're organizing now, filing civil suits. Some are testifying at the trials."
"Good," I said firmly. "Your voices matter. The world needs to hear what happened to you." The lack car pulled up the circular driveway. Chris Walker emerged, looking healthier than when I'd last seen him. Witness protection had agreed to let him attend this final gathering, a last visit to the scene of so many crimes. "They're demolishing it tomorrow," he said, gazing up at the mansion. "The whole estate." City Council voted unanimously.
They're turning it into a memorial park for the victims. It felt appropriate. Let Patricia's carefully manicured paradise become a reminder of the cost of unchecked power. How's the security business? I asked. Chris had started his own firm, specializing in protecting corporate whistleblowers. Busy, he admitted. Turns out a lot of people want protection from their employers these days. The Morrison case opened floodgates. My phone rang, River Cheng, calling from Beijing, where he was helping Chinese authorities investigate other tech companies using similar practices. Nicole, you need to see the news. Cooper just finished testifying. I pulled up the live stream on my phone. Cooper, gaunt and hollow-eyed, was being led from a federal courtroom. But it was the reporter's words that caught my attention. In explosive testimony, Morrison revealed connections to 17 other tech companies engaged in similar practices. The DOJ is calling it the largest corporate criminal conspiracy in American history. He really is burning it all down, Chris murmured. It's the only good thing he can do now, I replied. The only way to atone even partially. Another car arrived, Rosie Martinez with a small army of assistants. The wrongful death settlements are ready for your signature, she announced, producing thick folders. Every penny of the Morrison fortune divided among the victims' families. Patricia's lawyers are fighting it, but they don't have a leg to stand on. I signed document after document, watching billions of dollars flow from Morrison accounts to the families they'd destroyed. It wouldn't bring back the dead, but their children would have education funds, their spouses would have security, their parents would have care in old age. There's one more thing, Rosie said quietly, pulling me aside. Patricia's been placed in solitary. She attacked 3 inmates who were discussing your testimony. Even in prison, she's still trying to control the narrative. Let her, I said. She can control a 6x8 cell for the rest of her life. That's all the kingdom she has left. As afternoon faded to evening, more people arrived. Former Morrison Tech employees who'd tried to report safety violations, journalists who'd been threatened for investigating the company, families of victims who'd died mysteriously after questioning the Morrisons. We gathered in the empty mansion like mourners at a wake, sharing stories and finding solace in collective survival. Dr. Amelia Chen was among the last to arrive, bringing news from the medical front. The treatment program is fully funded now. Every affected worker will receive care for life. Several major medical schools are studying the cases to prevent similar poisonings. Something good from something terrible, I said. That seems to be your specialty, she replied with a small smile. Taking horror and transforming it into justice. As darkness fell, we lit candles for the dead. 43 Morrison Tech workers, Troy Ashton, the children who never made it home. Each flame a promise that they weren't forgotten, that their deaths had meaning because they led to the empire's fall. What will you do now? Lily asked me as we prepared to leave. Where will you go? I looked around at the assembled survivors, advocates and allies. I'm starting a foundation. Real charity work, helping victims of corporate abuse find justice. We'll provide legal resources, protection, counseling, everything people need to fight back against their own Morrisons. The Petro Foundation, Chris suggested.
No,
I said after a moment. The Phoenix Foundation. Because sometimes you have to burn everything down to rise again. As we walked away from the Morrison estate for the last time, I felt the weight of the past 3 years lifting. Tomorrow, the mansion would fall. In 2 months, Cooper and Patricia would be sentenced. The empire was dead. But from its ashes, something new was growing. Something built on truth instead of lies, justice instead of exploitation, courage instead of fear. My phone buzzed with messages from other victims, other fighters, other phoenixes, ready to rise. The Morrison story was ending, but mine was just beginning. 1 year later, I stood before the Senate Judiciary Committee in Washington, D.C., preparing to testify about corporate accountability legislation inspired by the Morrison case. The woman in the mirror bore little resemblance to the trophy wife who'd attended that fateful birthday party. My hair was shorter, practical, the designer clothes replaced by a simple suit I'd bought myself. The bruises long faded, but the steel they'd forged remained. Miss Petrov, Senator Elizabeth Warren began. Your actions exposed one of the largest corporate criminal enterprises in American history. Can you tell us what changes are needed to prevent another Morrison Tech? I leaned toward the microphone, my voice steady. Senators, the Morrison Empire thrived because we have a system that prioritizes profit over people, that treats worker deaths as acceptable losses, that allows the wealthy to buy justice. Until we address these fundamental flaws, there will always be another Morrison tech waiting in the shadows. The hearing room was packed with survivors, advocates, and journalists. In the gallery, I spotted familiar faces: Lily Chen, now leading a survivors advocacy group, Dr. Amelia Chen, who'd become the Surgeon General's advisor on occupational health, Chris Walker, whose security firm had exposed 3 more corporate conspiracies. The Phoenix Foundation has documented over 200 cases of similar corporate abuse since the Morrison trials, I continued. Companies using psychological manipulation, hiding worker deaths, trafficking vulnerable populations. The Morrisons weren't unique, they were just the ones who got caught. What specific legislation would you recommend? Senator Warren pressed.
I'd prepared for this moment for months. First, mandatory psychological evaluations for executives at companies over a certain size. Cooper Morrison showed clear signs of being under coercive control, but no one was required to notice or report it. Second, whistleblower protections that include financial security and physical safety. Third, personal criminal liability for board members who ignore safety violations. Some would say that's excessive regulation, Senator Cruz interjected, that it would stifle innovation. Morrison Tech was innovative, I replied. They innovated new ways to kill workers efficiently, new methods to traffic children profitably, new techniques to manipulate minds systematically. That's not the kind of innovation America needs. The hearing continued for hours, but my mind kept drifting to a letter I'd received that morning. Cooper had written from federal prison, his handwriting shaky but legible. Nicole, he'd written, I know I have no right to contact you, but I wanted you to know that I testified again yesterday. Gave them names of 3 more companies using our methods. It doesn't undo anything, but maybe it prevents something. I think about those workers every day. Their faces haunt me. Good. They should. I'm sorry for what I was, for what I did, for what I allowed myself to become. You saved my soul by destroying my life. Thank you. I hadn't decided whether to respond. Part of me pitied the broken man he'd become, but a larger part remembered the casual cruelty, the calculated violence, the willingness to murder hundreds for profit. Some bridges, once burned, should stay ash. After the hearing, Rosie Martinez met me on the Capitol steps. 3 senators want to sponsor the Phoenix Act, she said, barely containing her excitement. Full bipartisan support. It could pass within the year. And Patricia? I asked. Life without parole, as expected. She fired her 10th lawyer yesterday, still insisting she's a victim of a conspiracy. Rosie paused. She requested to see you. No. The word came out firm, final. Patricia Morrison is the past. I'm focused on the future. That evening, the Phoenix Foundation held its first national conference. 300 attendees, survivors, lawyers, journalists, activists, gathered to share strategies for fighting corporate abuse. The hotel ballroom was a far cry from the Starlight Ballroom, but the energy was transformative. A year ago, I was trapped in a glass cage, I told the assembled crowd, married to a monster complicit in an empire built on blood. I stayed silent because I was gathering evidence, but also because I was afraid. Afraid of losing my comfort, afraid of being disbelieved, afraid of ending up like Troy Ashton, buried beneath rose bushes. The room was silent, hanging on every word, but silence is what they count on. The Morrisons of the world depend on our fear, our isolation, our belief that we're powerless against their money and influence. They're wrong. Every empire falls when enough people say no more. Every monster loses power when we turn on the lights. Tonight you are those lights. Each of you carries a story, a truth that someone powerful wants hidden. Together we're going to drag those truths into the daylight. We're going to make the comfortable uncomfortable, and the powerful powerless. We're going to build a world where the next Nicole doesn't have to wait 3 years and risk her life to find justice. The applause was thunderous, but more importantly, I saw determination in their eyes. The Phoenix Foundation wasn't just an organization, it was a movement.
As the conference continued into the night, I stepped onto a balcony overlooking D.C. The Washington Monument stood illuminated against the darkness, a reminder that even the most powerful structures were built one stone at a time. My phone buzzed with a message from River in Shanghai. Shut down another factory using Morrison methods. 500 workers safe. The ripples keep spreading. I smiled, thinking of all the lives saved by one birthday party gone wrong. Cooper had given me bruises that night, but he'd also given me purpose. The Morrisons had created their own destroyer, teaching me through their cruelty exactly how to dismantle everything they'd built. Tomorrow would bring new battles, new monsters to face, but tonight, surrounded by fellow survivors turned warriors, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: hope. 5 years after the birthday party that changed everything, I stood in the memorial garden that had once been the Morrison estate. Cherry blossoms, Lily Chen's suggestion, bloomed where Patricia's prize-winning roses once grew. A simple stone monument bore the names of every victim, with space left for those still being discovered. Aunt Nicole, a young voice called out. Lily's daughter Maya ran toward me across the grass where Cooper had once practiced his golf swing. She was 4 years old, born into a world where the Morrison Empire was just a cautionary tale in business ethics textbooks. The ceremony's about to start, Lily said, catching up to her daughter. She wore a simple white dress, finally ready to marry the man who'd helped her heal from her trauma. I still can't believe you got everyone to come. The garden filled with survivors, advocates, and allies from around the world. Dr. Amelia Chen had flown in from Geneva, where she now worked with the World Health Organization to establish global standards for worker safety. Chris Walker arrived with his family, his security firm having evolved into an international network protecting whistleblowers. Even River Chang made the journey from Beijing, where he'd helped expose 17 more companies using Morrison-style tactics. As Lily exchanged vows in the shadow of the memorial, I thought about transformation. This place, once a fortress of wealth built on suffering, had become a sanctuary for healing. The survivors who'd once hidden in shame now stood proudly in the sun. Miss Petrov, a young reporter, approached after the ceremony. I'm writing a book about the Morrison case. 5 years later, how do you reflect on your role in bringing them down? I considered the question, watching Maya play among the cherry blossoms. I was just one person who said enough. The real heroes are the workers who died, the children who survived, the advocates who never gave up. I just had the privilege of being in a position to gather evidence. But the personal cost, she pressed. The abuse, the danger, living a double life for years.
Every scar was worth it, I interrupted gently. Cooper Morrison gave me a split lip and bruised face. In return, I got to save 300 lives and prevent thousands more deaths. That's a trade I'd make again. The reporter left, and I found myself alone by Troy Ashton's memorial marker. Fresh flowers lay at its base, his widow still visited monthly. You did it, a familiar voice said behind me. I turned to find Rosie Martinez, now a federal judge, holding a thick folder. The Phoenix Act just passed its final legal challenge. It's officially the law of the land. I took the folder, scanning the provisions we'd fought so hard to include: mandatory reporting of worker deaths, personal liability for executives who ignored safety violations, psychological screening for signs of coercive control, whistleblower protections that included witness protection level security. How many companies have reformed because of this? I asked. Hundreds, maybe thousands. The Morrison case became every CEO's nightmare. Better to treat workers well than risk becoming the next viral takedown. As the sun set over the memorial garden, casting golden light through the cherry blossoms, I felt a sense of completion. Not ending, the work would never truly be done, but completion of this chapter. My phone rang, unknown number, but I recognized the area code: Federal Prison. This is a call from Cooper Morrison, an inmate at. I hung up. Some ghosts were better left silent. The Phoenix Foundation headquarters, visible from the garden, blazed with light as night fell. Inside, a new generation of advocates worked late, investigating claims, protecting witnesses, building cases. The work I'd started alone in a storage unit had become a movement spanning continents. Ready to go? Lily asked,
Maya sleeping in her arms. The Foundation's night shift is waiting for your briefing on the Cambodia investigation. I took one last look at the memorial garden, at the names carved in stone, and the beauty that had grown from ashes. Then I turned toward the future, toward the next fight, toward the countless others, still trapped in their own glass cages. Let's go, I said. We have work to do. The Morrison Empire was dead, but its destruction had planted seeds of justice that would bloom for generations. And somewhere in the darkness, another Nicole was gathering evidence, building courage, preparing to laugh in the face of her abuser. She wouldn't be alone. None of them would be alone again. The phoenix had risen, and it had brought an army with it.
Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.